Warning! Major spoilers for Bob's Burgers Season 15, Episode 11, Mr. Fischoder's Opus. Hey subscribers, casual viewers, and everyone in between, you're watching Happy Fangirl 2, because why be cynical and sad when you can be happy and glad? I've mentioned in a previous video how I'm not a fan of Bob's Burgers, as the show leaves me anxious and with a sense of melancholy. Though I do get recommended episodes from my friends that are tailored to my preferences. One of these remarkable episodes is from Season 15, Episode 11, titled Mr. Fischoder's Opus. Beneath its usual chaos is something far more focused. A story about what it means to hear something differently, and to risk being wrong by following that instinct anyway. It's an episode about the tension between tradition and interpretation, and the small, often uncomfortable courage it takes to push against what's already been decided. The episode starts with Mr. Fischoder barging into Bob's restaurant and bragging to the Belchers that through a generous financial contribution, he has become the honorary conductor of the Wharf Art Symphony Orchestra. Though that isn't the only reason he's come by, and he offers Bob a deal he can't afford to refuse. Cater an upscale reception for a group of orchestra elites at his mansion, and he'll give him 2 months' rent in exchange for his services. But, and this is a very important but, only if the night all goes to his meticulous plan will Bob get his reward. Because Mr. Fischoder always has a scheme, an angle to play, whether it is for financial gain or personal gratification. As the conductor, he plans to diverge from Udo Pfeffer's Fifth Symphony, changing the regular tempo at the beginning of the piece to a quicker rhythm. Mr. Fischoder is a tempoist. They are a group of people who believe the first movement of Udo's work was meant to be at a fast rhythm instead of the regular boring tempo. Though to achieve his goal, he needs to butter up the musicians, or rather one performer, Jackson, the first violin, who's a real stickler for tradition. The night goes smoothly. At least as smoothly as it can go for the Belcher family. We know something is going to go wrong. And it comes in the form of the ever-present self-sabotage. Bob accidentally reveals that Mr. Fischoder is a tempoist. Jackson likens the peach cider burger to the faster tempo. Pleasant enough, perhaps, but unnecessary, flashy, an embellishment where restraint would do. The implication hangs in the air. Tradition doesn't need tampering, and neither do the classics. Mr. Fischoder has been exposed and his plan foiled. The musicians retreat to the safety of hierarchy, pulling back in line behind Jackson, the first violin. Tradition reasserting itself with tidy authority. Innovation is sidelined. The tempo slows. Order is restored. Mr. Fischoder is left doleful. Theatrics stripped away, ego bruised. From this point, the episode does something surprisingly tender. We see him not as an eccentric landlord or chaotic opportunist, but as a man in love with a piece of music. Through Bob's eyes, we're invited into that vulnerability. Fischoder listening to the recording at the normal, boring tempo, clutching, absurdly yet reverently, the diaper Udo Pfeffer supposedly wore while composing the piece. It's ridiculous, it's deeply on brand, and yet it's sincere of his love for the symphony, and at the tempo he claims it was meant to be played in. He has proof, a letter claiming the first movement on the symphony was meant to be played at a faster cadence. Whether the letter is authentic hardly matters. What matters is that he believes it. He hears something others refuse to hear. That's the emotional pivot of the episode. Underneath Mr. Fischoder's facade is a very human truth. Sometimes passion looks foolish from the outside. Sometimes conviction reads as delusion to those who prefer certainty. But loving something deeply, enough to argue for it, enough to risk embarrassment, isn't madness. It's devotion. And Bob sees that. He doesn't mock him, he doesn't dismiss him, he listens. For someone who finds Bob's Burgers can sometimes leave a lingering melancholy, this episode lands differently, because it doesn't punish vulnerability, it honors it. It lets Fischoder be eccentric and earnest at the same time. It allows the music and the man to be complicated. The tempo may return to tradition, the orchestra may fall back into line. But we've glimpsed something richer. The quiet bravery of hearing a different rhythm and daring, however briefly, to follow it. Mr. Fischoeder, theatrical as ever, resigns himself to conducting the piece the boring way. Safe, predictable, acceptable. That's where the episode could have ended. In compromise, in quiet defeat. Though there's still a few minutes left and Bob may yet change everything. Bob, now at the theatre hall, ruminates out loud on the peach sliders being too much. When Jackson criticized him for his food, for Bob it was a double blow. His food, his art, reduced to a metaphor in someone else's argument. The peach, the sweetness, the slight deviation from the expected savory profile. Suddenly it feels indulgent, rather than inspired. He begins to wonder if he's overcomplicated something that should have been simple. Maybe a burger doesn't need peaches. Maybe a symphony doesn't need speed. Maybe the safest path is the one that's already mapped. Linda tells him that's nonsense, because to Linda, joy is evidence enough. People love the peach sliders. Yes, they rocked the boat. Yes, they were unexpected, but that's exactly why they worked. They startled people into delight. The peach slider and the accelerated tempo are the same risk. A reinterpretation of something familiar. A belief that the classic form can hold a little brightness, a little lift. Jackson sees excess. Bob hears possibility. Gently nudged by Linda, he goes to see Mr. Fischoeder and changes the outcome of the episode. Bob doesn't deliver a grand speech. He doesn't overthrow the orchestra. He simply reminds Mr. Fischoeder of who he is, a man who thrives on spectacle, on flair, on doing things just a little differently. So Mr. Fischoeder rocks a boat. There's resistance, of course. Tradition doesn't loosen its grip easily. Jackson stiffens. The orchestra hesitates. But then something shifts. The music begins to breathe. The tempo lifts. The piece feels alive rather than preserved, and suddenly what was meant to be a rigid recital becomes something electric. That's the quiet triumph of the episode. Not chaos, not humiliation, not melancholy, just the courage to try. It's a reminder that sometimes innovation needs an advocate. It isn't just about burgers or symphonies, it's about the fear that trying something new will be dismissed as unnecessary. That deviation will be mistaken for ego. Yet both Bob and Fischoeder share the same quiet truth. Sometimes the added sweetness, the quicker rhythm, is exactly what makes the piece or the dish come alive. The episode quietly argues that deviation isn't disrespect, it's evolution. Don't let naysayers and those bound to tradition stop you from trying a different method and add an ingredient. What makes Mr. Fischoeder's opus so unexpectedly uplifting is that it frames innovation not as rebellion for rebellion's sake, but as expression. Mr. Fischoeder isn't changing the tempo despite Udo Peffer's Fifth. He's doing it because he hears something different in it, and that difference matters. Jackson, the first violin, represents the rigid devotion to the way it's always been done. The comfort of precedent, the safety of tradition. There's security in that space, but there's also stagnation. Growth demands friction. Art demands risk. Bob, as always, stands in the middle. He understands tradition. Burgers are, after all, a simple classic thing. But he also builds his whole identity around the burger of the day. A tweak, a twist, a small deviation that makes something familiar feel new again. Sometimes the tempo needs to quicken. Sometimes the recipe needs thyme in the title and peach in the patty. Sometimes a symphony you've always heard one way becomes something transcendent when someone dares to interpret it differently. And the beautiful thing? When the night goes well, when the risk pays off, when the musicians follow the new rhythm, it doesn't erase tradition, it expands it. So diverge, adjust the tempo, add the ingredient. The worst that can happen is someone clings tighter to the old score. The best? You create a version of music only you could have heard. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. And until next time, remember to stay happy!